So what we'd like to do now is, that concludes really the scripted session, if you will, of predefined questions and hearing from special customers. Now we want to hear from the entire group. So I'll walk around and just take any questions from panelists. Do you have any questions? Who wants to start?
I didn't know I was getting into that. My name's Kelly. I'm with a company called Facility Dude in Cary, North Carolina. Our sister company, School Dude, has Marketo, and we will be rolling it out for Facility Dude probably in the next 6 to 12 months. I have sort of a three-part question, so I apologize if this takes a little time. You guys might want to get a pencil. So one, Facility Dude's grown very quickly. School Dude's been around for about 11, 12 years. Facility Dude started direct sales 3 years ago, and our sales and marketing efforts have evolved quickly. I'm very nervous about implementing an automation tool. So my question is, when do you know when you're ready? We have a very young sales force. I want to support them, not distract them. So that's one question. What's your advice? If I know I have 6 months, what would you tell me right now I should be doing? I think a couple of you hit on some things, one, website redesign, some starting points of maybe you just want to do a couple of emails and get used to it. So do's and absolute don'ts. And then my last question was internally, how do you support this kind of implementation? Should there be a key role to ensure alignment across the organization? So, sorry.
Thank you.
First off, I would just say a do is to definitely put dude after any word and make that your company name. That is awesome. On your first question, just do's and don'ts, I'll just say don't feel like you have to boil the ocean. I think that's a pretty common mistake when people buy into a new technology. They love all the bells and whistles it has, but you don't necessarily need to implement them all on day one. So chances are doing that will be a big shock to the system if you don't have the processes set up for it yet. So if you go into something and you're like, oh, I want to roll out this really complex lead scoring program on day one, but you haven't taken the time to even think necessarily what are high value activities to us. When we look at the opportunities that have closed over the past 12 months, what do they have in common? So don't feel like you need to flip it on right away. Don't feel like you need to set up 12 nurturing programs. Start nice and simple, and just roll things out gradually from there.
Anyone else want to comment?
I would say, to Adam's point, like let's say you pick something like lead scoring. There's no reason why you can't build the model and let it run and learn about it and see it before you actually tell salespeople that you're going to do this and start changing the way the leads flow. There's a lot of times where in marketing automation we get tripped up because we try to open it all up and then we end up rewriting our entire business process. We bring in analysts and a year later you're coming out, right? And it's a much better approach is to just take kind of a lean startup agile approach where you try little things, you tweak them, you roll them out, you try the next thing. And so pick, one or two pain points that you have. Don't pick the largest pain point, but just some simple wins. Get a win under your belt, and then you'll see that there will be motivation across the company. Oh, this really works. This is going to help us. Yeah, I heard that the inside sales team was getting, better, quicker leads or something. Like you just start simple, and you'll create momentum. And then I was just going to say, Bill, do you want to maybe chime in on, the implementation side of things, or what? A 6-month roadmap might look like?
Yeah, so Brian is 100% right. When we've onboarded close to 100 clients on the Silver Pop platform, and the important thing is, it's like anything else. You have to have a problem that you're trying to solve. And so the first thing I would do is identify the problems you want to solve, and then how the marketing automation, and if you're going to integrate with Salesforce, how that is going to do it, and then lay out a calendar And we always lay out a 90 to 180 day calendar with milestones of, okay, low-hanging fruit, a welcome campaign, okay? It's one of the most effective things you can implement. It's very, very effective in lead nurturing, and that starts the whole process. So you get that going, and then what's the next one going to be? What kind of a nurture program or whatever. Then come back and look at, well, how am I doing it today? What am I going to move over there? And what resources are I going to have at my disposal to get the thing done? So it's really not trying to do everything that you don't do today, but taking what you do today and moving it into the new system. Then you can go to the uncharted areas and you'll have a successful implementation.
I would just add one quick thing, and that you mentioned you had a young Salesforce, and whether it's young or old, it's important to get sales buy-in on this whole process. And so I know a number of the vendors up here, including Oka, have sales tools that add value well beyond just getting more leads from whatever marketing's doing. And so we have something called the Output Profiler. Again, there's probably other versions of it, but when I pull up a contact record or a lead record or an opportunity record in Salesforce, I have the ability to not only see who that person is and all the rich Salesforce information, but I can see what we call their digital body language. So how did this person get to us? What emails have they seen? Which ones did they open? Have they downloaded any content? Have they submitted forms? I've yet to meet a salesperson who is not interested in learning that about the prospect before they pick up the phone or get ready to write that email to kind of further the engagement. So that usually gets salespeople very excited if you can expose those types of, that type of data. And the marketing automation platform is tracking it, whether you expose it or not. So you really should put it in the hands of the people who are going to transact and close the business.
Anyone can jump in?
Sorry, and I really like that answer in terms of aligning with sales. And just to piggyback off of it, when you're talking to sales, I would specifically ask them if they've noticed any trends in the type of content that brings the best quality leads. Because when you're looking at a 6-month roadmap, you really should be thinking about, well, what is the type of content, ebooks or white papers, things like that that are educational that will really get people interested, because you want to keep those salespeople happy, to the earlier point. So yeah, it's all about the content.
Great.
I was going to answer your last question. I think that it's nice to have someone who understands marketing technology and marketing operations, because I think there's a lot of adopters that get lost in the sea of how do I do it. I have great ideas. I probably know how to tactically execute it, and then they get into the product and they have no idea where to begin. I think people who understand operations and can do technology can be a really strong person on your team, and I don't see that role enough when I've worked with companies, and I think it's unfortunate because that role can really be a catalyst for driving additional revenue.
Thank you. All your questions answered? Okay, good. Sure. Who else has questions? Here we go. You don't have to stand up if you don't want to.
So I try to keep my pulse on trends in startups and in new technologies that are coming out. And recently I've noticed that for every startup I read about that's making the news, there's also one doing nothing but trying to help me pare down my email, help me filter my email. And one of you mentioned channels, one of you mentioned a new channel pops up and then it immediately becomes saturated. So I guess I really want to put this first to you and ask a couple of questions. One is, what are you doing to create new channels and provide me with those new channels? And two, what new channels do you see coming that you are immediately trying to put in my hands?
Thank you.
I'll jump in on that first. So I think that one of the things that we're really working hard to do is create an easy way for the marketer to take a little snippet of code, place it in any channel, and have that be a live feed of marketing message into that channel. And so the easiest example is the website, right? You got a CMS on your website. The website is a fantastic channel. It's just you had to do something to drive someone there, right? And sometimes the content in your website needs to also live other places. So what if you could basically create windows of content, right? So not a whole CMS page, but that little snippet, it could be a paragraph, it could be a sentence, it could be a word, was dynamically placed in the page based on, or in the feed or whatever, based on who the person is and where they're coming from and what you know about them. And that's some technology we're working on. So it's not inventing a new channel, it's just trying to bring relevance to the existing channels in a technical way that any marketer could implement, which doesn't require APIs and a bunch of fancy integrations and setup. I think that will be a capability that we'll see more and more. A lot of us invest money in our website, and most marketers about every 3 to 5 years completely trash their old website and start new. They implement a new CMS in hopes of all the new promise and glory and better website, and yet the website doesn't have a database, it doesn't have insight, and so it's doing its best to produce a good experience, but it's still not fed. And so I think the website is still in its infancy in terms of driving customer experience. No matter what you do on any channel, you are likely trying to connect a bridge with your brand and then bring that person from that channel closer to your brand, whether you're kind of pushing content out or pulling the customer relationship in as they engage more with you. And so you need technology that helps you do that. And the last thing I think is super cool and exciting is the app, right? And so if you think to yourself, does my company have an app? Do we have a reason to have a mobile app? But I think that the app basically becomes a new type of inbox. And so as I'm engaging in the app with your brand, I'm doing something that I need to do, the app helps me do something, it's the perfect place to feed little snippets of marketing streams that help the person move forward or get them help or change their experience. So anyways, long answer, but this kind of penetrating the layers of these channels to make them more rich in the interactions.
Thank you.
Yeah, really short answer. So there's no way a marketing automation vendor can be responsible or innovative enough to drive channel innovation on its own. Really, we're typically more reactive to channels, honestly. And so a little bit of teeing off of Brian's app conversation, but more from the perspective of providing apps for the people actually creating programs. So everyone in here has a smartphone, I'm certain, and probably a lot of you have tablets. None of you would have purchased those devices if you were told that what it comes with is what it comes with, and there's no app store. You can't download stuff onto it. You would never buy that device. And so Eloqua takes the same position with a marketing automation platform. You need an app universe, and it needs to be as simple as hitting apps or dragging it in, putting in the credentials, and plugging into those channels. So to answer your question, I don't know what channels are going to be out there 2-3 years from now, but with an app infrastructure that allows you to take advantage of them, it's the same situation as your iPhone or device, not necessarily needing to know what connectivity is going to be available in 18 months because it has that app underpinning.
Thanks. Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
I would just say email is not dead, and that if you're relevant and engaging and sending the right type of content, you're not going to want to filter me out. And that's across any channel, right? So if I'm doing a good job at content marketing, I think that it doesn't matter what mode or channel you're using. And so, all of these apps coming out saying, hey, we can help you clean out your spam. Well, if I'm sending things that really make a difference to you, that's not even going to be a necessity.
Thank you.
Most marketers don't do that.
Anyone else?
I'll take a shot. Yeah, one of the things that we did that was, to your point, what are the new channels? We use the tools that we have between Salesforce and campaign influences in Salesforce and the Pardot integration and everything, and we were able to actually put together which channels were being most effective for us. And one of the things that we were justifying ripping out our CMS and doing it all over again because we're on some bad technology anyway, but that's a whole different story, was the fact that we were able to prove via the marketing automation system and Salesforce together that 85 to 90% of all of our revenue that was generated had a significant influence from our website. They were downloading content, they were researching us, they were looking at stuff. So we did that, and now we're in the middle of this big project simply to make our website that much better and that much more integrated with our marketing automation system. So we're getting better information and more dynamic content, as all these gentlemen have been talking about. So the channel, as she said, is kind of almost irrelevant. It's what you're presenting to them, and if you're giving them that information that they significantly need.
Thanks. Anyone else on the panel?
I think this is kind of related. Spam is not my problem, actually. It's the people that I do want to hear from, but not every stinking day. And when you add them all up, companies that I like to hear from, but they want to contact me way too often, it means that on the day when I have no email, I still have 35 messages in my inbox first thing in the morning. And I've got all my rules to stick them off in their own folder and all that stuff. But some companies out there have gotten smart about the contact me less often option. Is that something that you guys enable? How far along are we in more marketers understanding that there's something in between contact me all the time and go away?
Yeah, that's a pretty common problem that I think all of us have as email recipients. I think the technology providers are kind of all there. I think for marketers, it's still a tough pill to swallow that people don't want to hear from you all the time. So I think it just comes with education, and I think it comes with a marketer that's hitting send to put him or herself in the shoes of the prospect and just say, hey, when I get hit over the head with things, does that make me more or less likely to buy? And I might love this brand, but if I get an email from them every 2 days, I'm likely to unsubscribe because it's just annoying, and they don't give me the option that you mentioned of less often, more often, etc. So I think the technology's there. I think the kind of best practices and whatnot is still coming up.
It really requires a shift in strategy at the CMO level, because the email marketer who's sending you those messages is rewarded and incented to send as many as they can, because if they get a 1% or a 3% return, 3% of the people open that message and actually click through and do the action, and then they can say in their weekly meeting that they were able to get this many people to the site or buy stuff or whatever it is. They look like a hero. But what no one's realizing is that 97% or whatever of the people are like, I love this brand, I'm tired of getting stuff that I have to ignore. And what happens is over time, you've trained your brain to ignore it so that when it is relevant, you miss it. And that's the problem. So it's just, marketers have to change, but it starts with what they're held accountable on and how they're measured. And what we found is the customers of ours who have implemented marketing automation, they'll start with one series of automation. We have a customer that, like 2% of their overall messages are automated, which is not very much. So they send a lot of email out. The 2% are driving 40% of the email revenue. So as soon as they measure that, they're like, okay. So then they start to convert other manual processes into automated processes that don't send to everyone. They just send to the 10 people that day who need it, or the 100 people. And we've got a customer, a smaller company called SmartPack, and they've implemented 46 or so automated processes. So almost all of their messages now are automation driven. And automation doesn't produce more spam if you have the right business rules and methodology. It actually just means that fewer people are getting the message you have, but it's so relevant that it produces more or equal revenue than the mass approach did.
I would also say that I think that there's going to be a shift. I think that there is this rise of the revenue marketer, and that's from the C-level. They want marketing accountable as revenue generators, not cost centers. And I think because of that, we're not going to be able to do quantity over quality anymore, right? So whether that's leads, whether that's email, we're going to be forced to be really smart, which is not as easy as quantity over quality, right? But I think it's going to happen because everything that you do is going to cause a reaction, and it's going to be measured, and you're going to have to say this is how much revenue it drove. And I see that a lot in the B2B community, which is mirroring B2C. They've always been responsible as marketers for revenue, and now you're seeing it more and more in the B2B.
Thanks. All right.
Me first? Yeah. Beloqua and Lenovo, you guys spoke about decreasing leads, essentially lead qualification is what it sounds like to me. I'm interested in that, and I was just curious, is that an Beloqua thing, or is that a methodology you guys came up with, is it a tiering system? What is that? Sounds awesome. Because avoid the fluff, right?
it's definitely a methodology, and I would expect that everybody, it's a methodology, so your lead scoring. And kind of to answer the previous question, you really want to come into this with all parties all the stakeholders at the table, really talk about, I heard a lot of people talk about, what's your expected outcome, what's the right content that's delivering those leads. So you really have to think about all aspects of the business, not just getting an email out. It's going to be a holistic approach. So knowing what to sales is a better lead, what to marketing, you got to kind of go through all those steps.
Yeah, so two aspects to it. There's the technical, how do I mechanically lead score, and that's actually the easier piece of the component. There's a fancy term called co-dynamic lead scoring. It basically means there's two sides of the coin to most buyers, right? There's the business card. Here's my title. Here's my company, my industry, our revenue size. Here's what type of role I have. And then the other side, there's the engagement, the interest. Here's my digital body language. I've never been to your website, but I actually follow you on Twitter, or I've been to your website 15 times in the last 60 days. And so mechanically, and I know this is not necessarily unique to any given vendor, but the idea is to blend those two to come up with a prorated scoring system that tells you not only is this person a fit demographically or psychographically, but they're a fit from a behavior perspective as well. So that's the first mechanical side, and believe it or not, it's the easier part to do. The other side is getting alignment on what lead scores are. Lead scoring is really an SLA between marketing and sales, and coming into terms across the table saying, when I give you someone that we are rating a 3, are we shaking our heads and saying yes, or nodding our heads and saying yes? A 3 means they meet these criteria. Good, okay. And so that conversation is often more difficult to get nailed down than connecting the buttons and wires after it happens.
Thanks. Got one question in the back here.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Mike Rainfield with Salesforce, so thanks for coming today. Quick question on, it was coming back to a question actually that was asked around where are we going to be a year from now. And really interesting answers, in particular, I want to kind of drill on the answer about predictive analytics from our own internal systems and our own data. Some of my clients, healthcare clients in particular, payers and providers, are trying to look at, hey, with the enormous amounts of data, you can use the overused term big data. There's big data out there and analytics capabilities through, we're in the RDU areas, so companies like SaaS. How do you see that driving marketing automation? And I really have customers that are really struggling with that right now. Some of others maybe as well. Thanks.
Thanks.
I do think that's nirvana for marketing automation. There's just a massive data set that we all collect because we have web analytics essentially as part of the solution. So that data set just gets larger and larger all the time, and you can start to do some really interesting things with it if you have the right tool set. And again, the piece I touched on and we heard down here was what pieces of content are driving the outcomes that you want. And if you close 10 deals in a quarter or something like that, is your data statistically significant? Probably not. But over time, as you really start to generate a lot of it, you can look at the commonalities between the deals that you've closed. I think Salesforce has kind of some tools around like Opportunity Genius and things like that. How similar are these opportunities to other opportunities that have closed? But imagine doing that with behavioral data and saying, hey, these deals that have closed, they've viewed these 40 pages, they did it in this sequence. This prospect that I'm looking at is 98% similar to that prospect. I have a pretty good feeling about it. Or they aren't similar, what do I need to do to get them on that right track? I think that's probably where we're all headed, but it's a hard problem to solve, and there are a lot of non-marketing automation vendors that are providing good tool sets to crunch that data. So whether or not we do it ourselves or partner with players that do that, I think remains to be seen. But it's a good problem to tackle.
I think the cost of the technology to run predictive is coming down considerably, and that's going to open up all kinds of new innovation. We're seeing all kinds of innovation around us. We've got partners that do probably the thing that was used, or I guess the first innovation, which was the recommendation engine type of approach, where if you're a retailer and people look at these products, you can associate other people who've bought products and you can predict what you should show them, right? And that was kind of the first base, right? And it's not like companies haven't been doing predictive for, decades. They have. It's just that it was so offline and it required scientists and huge machines to crunch data, and 3 months later you'd come back with an answer that was really broad, like we should sell more red shoes because in the East Coast they like red. It was just tremendously broad. The future is predictive to the person, and that's the piece that technology is just beginning to allow us to crack at scale in real time. And I think over the next couple of years you'll start to see that emerge as a solution that marketers can use to predict the individual and better understand the individual.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, ditto. It's all about the individual. So again, with this being the year of the customer for Salesforce, Heroku, Desk.com, and Work.com are all HubSpot customers. And they're really looking to us to make their marketing as personalized as possible so they can really take that corporate message and extend it out for the different other clouds that Salesforce owns. So they're looking to us for some help there.
Great. So we're coming right up at 1:30 now. So I think we should go ahead and wrap things up as far as the general discussion goes. Again, you'll have the opportunity to reach out to any of the partners specifically to talk about product features and functionality. We're just trying to do our best to keep it really agnostic for this discussion, and really appreciate everyone coming to the table. How about a round of applause for our participants?